How about that? Whew, thanks for that song. One last time, Hamilton. And President's Day weekend. Who knew? This scene that you just saw focuses on George Washington's high resolve. Washington peacefully leaves the presidency, stepping away from power, guided by his role model, Cincinnatus, that Roman citizen soldier who handed power back to the people when the time came. As Washington sings in the song, "If I move on, the nation learns to move on and outlives me when I'm gone." Today's reading, just before that, reminded us to keep fresh before us such moments of high resolve, as shared by the deep witness of Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. Now, known as the chaplain of the civil rights movement, Thurman advised Dr. King and many other movement leaders. He kept reminding them of the need to cultivate a rich inner life in order to advance liberation and equality, a key to remaining strong during a prolonged struggle. Thurman taught that prayer and meditation keeps us grounded, self-reflection keeps us honest about our own failings, and journaling keeps our minds engaged in the intellectual ideas grounding the movement. Not only is the foe relentless, Thurman shares, but the persistent grind of daily life, it allows the to-do lists and the annoying contingencies to dominate our consciousness. Instead, Thurman urges us to remember our loftier goals, to heed the moral guidance of our high resolve, those ethical standards that should characterize our actions and the world in which we live. And yet, Howard Thurman also knew that moral philosophy is useless as mere concepts. Those values must govern our actions and guide how we build our communities. He urged us to discover the core of our commitments to peace, empathy, and compassion, to bring into being a world shaped by our high resolve. As we approach the 250th anniversary of our nation's birth, we aim to keep fresh before us those moments of high resolve informing our nation's promise, those most cherished of American values: pluralism, equality, liberty, duty. Perhaps there we can further our unfinished revolution. In our age, it may to some seem quaint to examine a man like George Washington to explore virtue, but I urge us to invite a deeper complexity into our moral calculus. Yes, the revolution remains unfinished, and imperfect people can do amazing liberatory things. Indeed, all who ever promoted and sacrificed for social justice have been imperfect, with many flaws, and some of those flaws that still haunt our nation. We confront our own imperfections by examining theirs. Now, George Washington was not a prolific writer like his contemporaries Franklin and Jefferson. He did leave us some revealing work nonetheless. He is known, for one, for a book on civility. These rules for civility have been traced to a French class Washington took when he was just 14. They were exercises in translating a 17th century book of manners from French into English. Guidelines describing expectation for a certain type of company among upper-class Euro-American society. And Washington so loved the advice given in this text that he kept a copy of it throughout his life. Here's a sample. "Shift not yourself in the sight of others, nor gnaw your nails. Don't make faces." How am I doing with that, Reverend Anya? And my personal favorite, this is number 17. Do not beguile anyone with flattery, for he who aspires to gain favor with honeyed words shows that one does not hold the other in high esteem, that he deems him far from sensible or clever in taking him for someone who can be tricked by flattery. How's that going today? Rules for civility. Now, many writings Washington left us are instructive. In 1790, just 1 year into his first term as president, he made a public declaration of religious pluralism. In a response to a letter he received from a synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, Washington wrote them back, sharing the following: "If we have wisdom to make the best use of the advantages with which we are now favored, we cannot fail, under the just administration of a good government, to become a great and a happy people. So may the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. So may the Father of all mercies scatter light and not darkness in our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in his own due time and way everlastingly happy." This was the very first time a message from any European or American leader honoring Jewish people and promising them full citizenship was uttered. 1790. In light of today's rising anti-Semitism, some coming from right-wing pundits as well as too many activists on the left, let us remind America of how Washington calmed the fears of the Jewish citizens of Newport. And let us remember also that Islamophobia stems from the same ugly hatreds as anti-Semitism. Now, George Washington seemed to be quite good at endings. He stepped away from the presidency once its time had come, although many around him urged him to remain. Some called him foolish for relinquishing power. He emancipated all the enslaved people in his control upon his death. Yes, a justice denied for too long. He delivered a forceful farewell address, which is what they were composing in that scene, warning against the dangers of factions and political parties, placing their special interests ahead of the whole nation. And then there are the 13 toasts, which we shared last week in part 1 of this series. So first, what exactly is a toast? You ever wonder where this word comes from? A toast gets its name from flavored breads which were dropped into water or other drinks to flavor them. It was customary to honor a host or comment on a given occasion while sharing a beverage, offering a toast. Toasting or pouring libations are ancient practices, as old as when human beings first gathered to celebrate something in common: success, good fortune, liberation, a birth. The 13 toasts were offered at France's Tavern, a place still in operation in the Wall Street area in Lower Manhattan. Be certain to visit the museum upstairs if you ever go there to have some Yankee pot roast. It was there after lunch one day that Reverend Anya and I first discovered those 13 toasts. They happened during celebrations on November 25th, 1783, and the guests were American, French, Swedish, and Dutch military officers and the governor of New York. All toasted their victory and the establishment of the American Republic. It was the final military act of the American Revolution. The war had been won, so Washington resigned his military commission, walked away, as he later would do as president. What an example. Among the toasts were praises lifted to the United States of America, which was secured that very day, to His Most Christian Majesty of France, the United Netherlands, the King of Sweden, These three European powers assisted us in the war, as did some forces from Poland and elsewhere. And I wonder, how have we treated these longtime allies lately? To the American Army, this toast received a loud hurrah. To the fleet and armies of France, which have served in America, France was our closest ally for most of our history, and we theirs. To the memory of those heroes who've fallen for our freedom, a mournful cry to remember the dead. May our country be grateful to her military children. An almost biblical urge to not forget our duty to the widows and orphans of those same war dead. And then come the toasts pointing to our highest resolve as a people. Those ideals which, when followed, form the foundation of our nation's greatest promise. So as I read each, consider which ones our society currently seems to uphold. May justice support what courage has gained, or may our conduct and that of our posterity embody the values for which we so bravely fought. To the vindicators of the rights of mankind in every quarter of the globe, reminding us that freedom-seeking people everywhere are our allies, and they count on us because injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. May America be an asylum to the persecuted of the earth. This sentiment is echoed, as you know, by M.L. Lazarus's poem At the Foot of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. Have we honored this one? May a close union of the states guard the temple they have erected to liberty. Or keep partisanship, factions, oligarchs, cancel culture, any of that nonsense from driving us into separate corners and misplacing our loyalties. Lastly, may the remembrance of this day be a lesson to princes. Well, it does seem that maybe somewhere today in some halls of power, some folks like to don the mantle, attitude, and trappings of kingship. Our revolution, it seems, remains woefully unfinished. And perhaps it has always been so. Justice, like love, is best used as a verb, not a noun, as a way of being. It's not a destination we will reach someday. It is how we orient our everything. Examining these toasts informs us about our work in America's unfinished revolution. Yes, history is fraught as we always judge what happened through our own moral lenses, which we should. There is moral evolution. But in our judgment of the people of history, we are asked to place ourselves in their shoes. William Faulkner was right. The past is never dead. It's not even past. And as James Baldwin echoes, the great force of history we carry within us. History is literally present in all that we do. George Washington's life is an imperfect example of a life of learning, compassion, restraint, concern for others, and a willingness to sacrifice all to bring into being a republic devoted not to kingship or raw power, but to sacred ideals grounded in a radical universalist definition of humanity. The notion of human dignity for which they fought, upon which our nation is founded, is grounded not in something earthly or human, but in the transcendent, in what many would call holy. Howard Thurman was very acquainted with this and with these ideals, these moments of our nation's highest resolve, which he championed in his work for liberation. Think of a moment of resolve as a resolution, a statement composed in debate and collegial camaraderie, expressing our deepest values as eloquently as we can. And the American Revolution was driven by resolutions expressing perhaps some of the loftiest ideas ever put into words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Beloveds, we know how multitudes were excluded from the promise in 1776. Indeed, the words of the founders contain more truth and justice than did their lives and the customs by which they lived. The revolution remains profoundly unfinished. And this work is to be furthered by us and our posterity. Nevertheless, these values remain central to America's sacred promise because they are grounded in everlasting, universal notions of what it means to be human. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness cannot be sustained without a definition of humanity grounded in the transcendent. As Amre Bohm teaches in his new book, Radical Universalism Beyond Identity, when we define what it means to be human by citing only other human constructs, as being a member of this tribe or this race or this nation or that, it becomes all too easy to declare other human beings as outside of the human family and their divine right to dignity. And once dehumanized, it becomes easier to treat them with cruelty, violence, and indifference. The values of pluralism, equity, liberty, interdependence, duty, these lie at the core of America's highest resolve and at the core of Unitarian Universalism. It was these ideals which inspired Frederick Douglass to not lose hope in America, although slavery was real, and goaded Abe Lincoln to wage war to end America's original sin of slavery. The unfinished revolution is ours to further. It promises transformation, and keeping fresh before us these moments of our high resolve, we learn lessons, we tell the truth. Beloveds, what should we toast together? For when the time for toasting draws near, I pray that it will come because we have championed and embodied the values that we know build a better world and make that world more beloved.